Don't sacrifice quality and flavor when you're in a hurry. Golden Pride offers ribs, fried chicken, green and red chili breakfast burritos, and Frontier Cinnabons. 4 great locations, or visit us online at goldenpride@abq.com. Golden Pride Barbecue Chicken and Ribs, proud supporter of Proview Sports Network. Proview Network crew, assemble!
That's good for first.
High school sports are back live on Proview Sports Network.
Sadie's is a proud supporter of New Mexico high school sports and athletics, and we here at Proview Networks would like to thank Sadie's for their continued support in helping us bring you all of your New Mexico high school sports coverage.
Car Crafters, proud supporter of Proview Sports Network.
Are you sure we're supposed to be doing this?
Don't worry, I've watched him do it 1,000 times. Come on, what's the worst that can happen?
No! Bad dog!
Hi, welcome to Car Crafters. What happened?
Don't worry, we'll make it like it never happened.
Car crafters, it's like it never happened.
The Sports Desk is proudly presented by Car Crafters. It's like it never happened.
And welcome everybody here to the Sports Desk. We are live here on Comcast Channel 26 ProView Networks. We're live on Facebook, and we're also going to be on YouTube, so you get to see the full gamut of the Sports Desk and all the programming here on ProView Networks. I'm Scott Galletti, along with Ed Nunez, and we will start first, Ed. Hard to believe it's already half the season.
I know. We say this every year, and I can't believe it either. It's already, what, week 5, I believe?
Week 5.
So, and we're saying this in another couple weeks, we'll be saying it's time for basketball. And I still want to get through football, though, because there's been some really good games, and some games, you know, I was very shocked to see Roswell go into Las Lunas and dismantle the Tigers after the Tigers had taken the #1 ranking, and Roswell just came in and laid it on them. Yeah, that was the biggest surprise. We'll talk about the scores and kind of run things down here in a little bit, but what are some of the things that stood out to you this week? Probably that, and I think the game that you covered with David Williams on ESPN Radio, the way Volcano Vista came back in the last seconds to stun Manzano. That was one of the best final minute sequences that I've done in quite a while. And it was a game that David Williams and I, before the game on ESPN Radio 1017 The Team, were looking at each other thinking, we hope this is a close game. It was better than that. It was very compelling from the opening kick all the way to the finish. Well, you got more than you bargained for, I'm sure, and especially the last 2 scores by Volcano Vista, and that's stunned Manzano in their homecoming, and those kind of losses have a tendency to kind of, I call them hangovers without the alcohol. Right. So we'll have to see how the Monarchs bounce back this week. And the thing is, Manzano played so well, and I'm going to kind of go back and forth here on the show. I told Alden Iowani, our fine director, one thing, but let's take a quick look at the Week 4 schedule here. We'll go through that, and then we'll bring on our special guest. So we will go through the Week 1 schedule. There it is right there. Thursday's games, you had Albuquerque over Del Norte. That's one of the things that James Yotis told us on the show. When those teams get together, and we had James on, and he said, well, this is one of my top games because when these 2 schools get together, it's usually
like this, a very, very close game.
Playoff atmosphere, always a close game, and they didn't disappoint again at Milne Stadium. I don't know why those two teams always seem to come down to the final play, and it did again.
Let's look at the other games as you see Centennial over Sandia in a blowout. Roswell, you talked about that one. How about that? 42-20. And it seemed like Las Lonas just could not stop Roswell's attack.
Remember, this game was tied 7-all at halftime. And I thought the Coyotes came out in the third quarter, hogged the ball controlled, several third down conversions, and they really took it to them. And I think one of the things they exposed on the Tigers offense was the lack of a real running game. And the Coyotes, great job there.
Robertson, Ruidoso, rematch of last year's game that you did, the championship game, and it didn't disappoint, did it?
Man, 57-54 last year in the championship, and Robertson again gets revenge. Ruidoso beating them last year, so Robertson turns around and beats the Warriors.
And the Saturday games, as we look at the other portion of the schedule, West Mesa over Rio Grande, Cleveland all over Mayfield, Valley beat Miramura, and how about Hope Christian? They continue to roll, Ed.
You know what? We had James on last week, and he was talking about Vince Casada, that plays for Hope, the triple threat. And we were used to talking about their dominance in basketball. This year, they're doing well in football.
We will hold off on our highlights. We're going to look at the La Cueva-Cibola game here in a little bit. But right now, we're going to bring on our special guest from the Albuquerque Journal, and that is Jeffrey Grammer. I call you Jeff. Some people call you Jeffrey.
Yeah, when I'm in trouble, I get called Jeffrey still. So.
Well, your name is spelled exactly like my brother's name, so it was the same thing. Good. If he ever got in trouble, it was Jeffrey.
That's right.
Otherwise, it was Jeff. So.
Yeah, I still get Jeffrey plenty, and that'll tell you.
That's nice. Well, you had a chance to really decipher the Lobo game on Saturday, and we'll take a look at the score here. The Lobos against New Mexico State, the Rio Grande rivalry, and you know this was a pretty compelling game in the fact that New Mexico State rolled out to a 14-0 lead, and then all of a sudden, boom, the Lobos came right back with their third-string quarterback, who I think could be their number one day.
Could be. I'll pull in the reins on that, and I'll get back to what my thoughts on the quarterback play in a minute. But
I figured you would.
What I will say is this: I think the Lobos had every reason to raise the white flag early, going into that game, knowing they needed that game a lot more than New Mexico State did. I don't think in this rivalry game, a game was needed, a win was needed more than the Lobos needed this one in a long time, in several years. I think the offseason, coming off a 3-win season, the Lobos needed this win pretty bad. Had they lost this game to New Mexico State, then they go into an off week. They have a home game against Liberty, which fans probably aren't going to get overly excited about had they lost, and then they have 2 more road games. So you're talking about 1 more home game in the next month, and it's against Liberty. Had they lost this game, I think we would have the dialogue around this town would have been about attendance again, would have been about money again. This at least buys them a couple more weeks of good feelings in the fan base. So they needed that win, and they had every reason to sort of raise the white flag early with their third-string quarterback when he threw a pick 6 on the opening drive. Another touchdown. They're down 14-0. I think they had every reason to call it a game, and they didn't. So that, more than anything, not the style of play, not how pretty it was, because it wasn't. It was an ugly game. But the fact that they won a game that they needed to when they were down 14-0.
Now, I heard you on the air with Joe O'Neill on Monday, and I wanted to ask you this after looking at the yards. And you see the total yards, 368 for the Aggies, 325 for the Lobos. To me, that's the red flag because they're giving up a lot of yards against teams that weren't really doing well offensively. New Mexico State had struggled. The first game against Incarnate Word, they gave up a lot of yards. Is there anything there?
I think that the 2 defenses actually did fairly well, and here's why. They had 80-plus plays. UNM and New Mexico State both were into the 80s on number of plays. So while UNM ended up with 198 rushing yards, I was more concerned with the offenses than I was the defenses. If your defense is out there having to defend 80 plays a game, you're going to give up some yardage. I was more concerned that UNM, while they got 198 rushing yards, 198 I believe it was, they did it on 61 carries. They only averaged 3.2 or 3.3 yards per carry against a defense in New Mexico State that had been giving up 5.9 yards per carry. That was a little alarming. That said, Sharon Jones, third-string quarterback who wasn't quite ready early in the year, had the hamstring injury in camp, throws that pick 6 in the early going on that first drive. I think it was pretty obvious in the first half that they weren't going to throw. At least they were going to get to halftime without really airing it out too much. And Frank Spaziani, the defensive coordinator for New Mexico State, former Boston College head coach, he's a really good defensive coordinator. He knew that. He knew that we were going to go man-man on any receiver out there, but we weren't going to do much more than that. So it was pretty clear early on the Aggies were going to play the run all game, and they did, and that's why the Lobos struggled to a certain extent. I would still be a little concerned overall with both offenses because Incarnate Word, the Lobos moved the ball a little better, but they also moved the ball on the Lobos more. So I think these two offenses, the Lobos and the Aggies, were about as bad as I've seen these two. And we've seen some bad football with these two games, these two teams in years past. I think these two offenses on Saturday were about as bad as I've seen in a while, which again doesn't change the win for the Lobos. And that's when you win the ugly games, you'll take it.
Let's bring in the resident Lobo fan, Ed Nunez. And Ed, you and I kind of talked about this game. What did you see?
I think one of the things that concerned me was the average per carry, and I think the explosive plays with Jarrell Presley and Terrion Gibson seem to be a thing of the past when the triple option was at its heyday. They can't seem to get the edge anymore. That's kind of concerning to me. I thought the offensive line would dominate a little bit more. They didn't. Delane Hart-Johnson, I think they have to find a way to use him more. But with Sherion Jones not getting a lot of work in camp because of that hamstring, did they dumb the packages down a little bit? I was going to ask you that.
I think they did. Now, going into the week, obviously a coach isn't going to tip their hand and say they did. He said the package was there. He had the full package. I think it was pretty evident early on that wasn't probably the case. Maybe they went into the game with the whole package available, but a pick six on the opening drive kind of closed that playbook up pretty quick. I think it was. I think it's pretty safe to say they weren't airing it out. At least in the first half, they weren't even going to try and look to the receivers. Any passes they did were as safe a route as they possibly could have had, and maybe that's why the receivers didn't get as involved. But that's not different from years past when that was the game plan the whole time. So I think that, we won't read too much into what they did offensively this game because not only did they have the quarterback situation, I think they knew that the opposing team wasn't going to run up the score too much on them because their offense was just as bad. So you play it safe the entire time. You kind of take your chances with your defense, and the defense is what won it. I mean, 5 picks, that's going to win a lot of games for you. So I think that probably affected the offensive play calling for the Lobos, knowing their defense was doing so well.
I think your point's well taken, though, Jeff, in that I've been a Lobo fan since 1970. I remember listening to Mike Roberts, Sam Scarborough, and Fred Henry in the backfield. I remember that. So I think if they lose this game, with Liberty coming in 2 weeks, you got an announced 12,000 announced.
Yeah.
Now, buys them a couple of weeks, like you said, but that doesn't mean they're going to get 22 either.
No.
So antipathy has kind of set in. There's a little bit of let's blame. People are upset with the athletic department. I heard you a little bit on the ESPN yesterday.
Yeah.
And the easy target, it always seems to be, is Lobo football, unfortunately.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. It is the easy target. People always want to talk about football as the greatest potential for growth, the greatest potential for revenue. That's absolutely true. That also puts a target on your back when things are going bad. And right now, things obviously aren't going that great for Lobo football. That's why that win was needed, just to, if nothing else, carry over the wait-and-see approach that some Lobo fans bring into football season every single year. They kind of have this wait-and-see. That buys them at least a few more weeks. They're probably going to beat Liberty. I would assume they're going to beat Liberty. I guess, don't put the cart before the horse, but...
Do you know anything about Liberty?
All I know about Liberty is they blew out Old Dominion in their first game, and then they lost pretty soundly to Army in their second game.
This month.
And I know their coach.
This week is going to be their biggest test. They're going to play North Texas.
Yeah.
But, going on the road and losing to a wishbone kind of style team that is physical and known for the physicality. The one thing that I've read up on Liberty, because that's one of the games that I called a guaranteed win the minute the schedule came out.
Sure, it should be.
Well, guess what? They have their whole offense. They have their whole defense. And by the way, they got 2 guys who are projected to be NFL receivers.
I think that right now, as much as they needed the win against New Mexico State, if they lose in front of their home fans to Liberty,
well, Liberty's going to be a better offense than New Mexico State. I'll guarantee you that.
Absolutely.
I will guarantee you that.
I don't think there's a fan in this town. There's a very small percentage of
Not
fans.
that I'm saying that Liberty's going to win, but I'm just saying watch out for a closer game than people think, because someone texted me and said, you might want to do some homework on Liberty before you say that's a guaranteed win. So I did my homework, and it's like, whoa.
Well, let me ask you this. What would be the worst loss of the two to the Lobo fan base? Going down to Cruces on Saturday and losing to New Mexico State, 3rd year in a row. We're losing at home to Liberty that has no name recognition whatsoever to local fans.
I've been saying for the longest time, Jeff, that the worst case scenario would be beating the Aggies. Everyone, hey, we beat the Aggies. And then 2 weeks later, they lose to Liberty. I think that would be far worse. Yeah. I think that would be far worse.
You know what?
Even though I truly believe, I think Liberty will sweep the Aggies in their 2 games when they play each other.
think so? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, let me weigh in
Reading up
that,
on them, they're a better team, and they've got basically they're where the Aggies were last year with their offense. They're all senior laden. They got guys who they have a quarterback who had 3,000 yards, and basically it was built. That's why they're doing independent this year, because this is probably the best team they've ever had.
Okay. Let me weigh in on that real quick, Scott, because I think, I've been here a long time. I think losing the Aggies would be far worse because it's the 3rd year in a row, and you mentioned that.
Right.
Not only that, they went to a bowl game, and their model right now with Mario Mocha doing more with less, or less with what, is working better. Yeah. So these fans would have been I know I would have been. I'm a Lobo man, so losing that game to me, no way. Yeah. That's just me, though.
I think the external dialogue, real quick, the external dialogue of the 2 programs over the past year was look how good New Mexico State's doing with less money, and look how UNM's going through all its financial problems. I think that loss probably. I tend to agree that New Mexico State would have been a worse loss.
The reason why I say otherwise is my first year in 2008, Rocky Long's last year. What was the biggest thing that was talked about? The year before, Sacramento State. That's true. People still talk about that game. That's true. If they lose to Liberty, they'll go, who? At least people knew about Sacramento State. If they lose to Liberty, I think it's going to be who'd you just lose to? Nope. So I don't think it's going to happen, but it's going to be a little more of a fight. They got a better offense than either 2 of the wins that they have so far.
That's true. That's true.
We will take a quick break here. He's Jeff Grammer from the Albuquerque Journal. Ed Nunez, I'm Scott Galletti. This is the Sports Desk. Time now for the top 10 plays of the week, brought to you by Dreamstyle.
Twins out to the right side. Gonna throw it again over the middle. Has a man wide open, caught. And that's going to be a touchdown for Jeremy Rotert. And the Rams are back in it.
2 plays.
Pressure coming to Balizan. He's going to heave it up. This one's up for grabs, and it's caught.
Down there, that's all I know. 2nd and 5. Summer, quick out again. It's Robertson. He again wide open out of the backfield. He makes one miss. He's got a blocker in front. And look out, Nas Robertson. Intercepted at the 33. It's some room on the outside.
Close 0. There it is.
Quick pass ball's going to be caught by Ailman. Ailman spinning away at the 10. Ailman to the 5. Dives for the end zone.
Marietta Sharp will serve. Here's Martinez. Kept up. Mortensen. Back row. McIntosh to put it away. No. Free ball over. McIntosh on the outside for the win! APS Metro champs again! It's La Cueva. 25-21 the final.
Oh, that's a lateral. Here's another pass.
And now he's going to throw it. And now he's going to look back to Marcus Steele. Steele's got it at the 5. He's going to dive to the end zone.
Touchdown.
Touchdown.
We should get pretty good field position to start here. We feel it at the 45. Still on his feet. Missed a couple tackles. Plenty of green up in front. Quesada with an opening house call for the Huskies.
Yeah, I can't see him punting inside the 35. They're only about the 32-yard line. There's Statue of Liberty.
It is the Statue of Liberty, Tom, and it's Williams, and he's going to take it all the way.
Ailman goes in motion. They're going to keep it coming right up the middle. Got some daylight at the 40 midfield. One man to get by, has a blocker in front, cuts it back to the left, to the 20, back to the right. This is going to be 6 for Las Cruces, and that's Ivan.
The New Mexico High School Coaches Association, established in 1941, is an organization of New Mexico's best and most professional interscholastic coaches. Coaches across work daily to help our student athletes excel in the classroom, on the field of play, and in our communities. Students that participate in interscholastic activities attain higher grades, higher graduation rates, and higher wages. Responsible for the North-South All-Star Games, statewide Coaches Award Program, and providing multiple professional development opportunities for New Mexico's coaches. Be a great coach by coaching beyond the game.
Well, I'm going to the frontier, walk up to the cashier, order up a root beer and a #1. Cover it with green stuff, one scoop is not enough. Find a booth is real tough, back by the Duke. Meet my family, meet my friends in the quirkiest restaurant I have ever been. All of Albuquerque's favorite spot, it's the Frontier Restaurant.
The Frontier Restaurant is a proud supporter of Proview Sports Network.
Back here on the Sports Desk, here live on ProView Comcast Channel 26 on Facebook, and you're also going to be able to watch us later on YouTube. I'm Scott Gallotti along with Ed Nunez. We have Alden Iowani, as always, our fine producer-director. We have Josh Brown back in the studios. Jason Pohl is out somewhere. Adam Deal's in the house. And we also have our special guest, Jeff Grammer from the Albuquerque Journal. And Jeff, we were talking about the Lobos. This is a segment that I wanted to talk to you a little bit about. What's going on with UNM? Because it seems like every time that things are going to kind of dissipate and get back to normal after the sports were cut, well, you know, maybe there will be a fight after January, maybe not, but in the meantime, we're going forward. And now all of a sudden, new stuff just keeps coming out. And unfortunately, you, Jessica Dyer, the bearers of bad news and all this, just doing your job. And you and I had a discussion about this, about how you weigh what you put in, and some stuff you just can't not put in.
So we thought, Jessica and I have had this conversation several times over the last, I'd say, month or so. We thought that the second vote to cut sports, there'd be some blowback for a while, be obviously some raw emotions. When the soccer season started, they'd come up again. But we did think it'd start to die down a little bit. Little did we know, we didn't put enough faith into the UNM regents to bring it up at the next several meetings, and finances came up again, and sports cuts and how they were handled came up again, and regents started taking shots at the faculty senate president for not supporting the decision a little more. They keep doing things that show the inner workings at the university right now are not yet healed. I'll say that. New president, new athletic director, they're all still trying to get their feet on the ground and get a firm stance on moving forward themselves. They've come in and started dealing with the situation. They didn't really, first of all, they had to get up to speed on it because they didn't start the situation. So they spent a big chunk of their first year here just learning about the situation that they then had to solve. And whether or not they solved it or not, it's up for debate. People can have their own conclusions on that. But what I will say is, I thought about a month ago things would start to die down a little bit, at least until the legislative session. I knew it would come up again then, but that's not the case. Finances are still an issue. The Attorney General decided to come out with his transparency report when he did. The timing of that, I'll leave it to everybody else's minds to decide about the timing of it all. I thought it was going to die down for a while, but it couldn't when the Attorney General
that report, and it wasn't even a finalized report, it was kind of a status report, came out of the blue.
Well, it came out of the blue, but then they also had agents search the UNM Foundation that night related to that report. So the report, while like you said, it was not a finalized report, it wasn't drawing conclusions, final conclusions anyway, no charges were filed, nothing like that. Then they searched, actually I had to say with the subpoena and a search warrant, actually searched the UNM Foundation for documents and got some of those. So those kind of things, while we at the paper are like, okay, let's let it rest a little bit, let it settle, let the emotion calm down before we start just piling on again with more coverage. When that happens, when the Attorney General's actually fulfilling a search warrant, executing a search warrant at the UNM Foundation, we got to cover that. When UNM regents are arguing at a public meeting with the UNM faculty president saying, you didn't support our decision enough, why didn't you? Calling the UNM faculty cowards for not supporting the decision, and the faculty saying, well, let us be a part of the decision if you're going to criticize us for not supporting it. Those are things we have to cover. Those are things that show the inner workings at UNM right now that are still very raw. I think this is a university that needs to move on from this. I think it's a media that needs to move on from this as well. But at some point, both sides kind of have to quit making it happen.
Right.
Anytime a regent's going to attack the faculty president, we're going to cover that. Anytime the AG is going to execute a search warrant, we're probably going to cover that. Unfortunately, I think they know that too. And I think sometimes this is just about their attempt to get back in the news sometimes. And that's sort of what's been going on for a while. Right now, I think the next step is we have two governor candidates who have been very vocal as recently as Friday at a governor candidate forum, talking about UNM's handling of the recent sports cuts. Both are very critical of the handling. One of them went as far as to say, I will make sure sports are coming back. That was Michelle Lujan Grisham. Steve Pierce, I'm going to talk to this afternoon and try and get him on the record to see if his camp also plans to get sports back. The interesting part of that is the governor has actually no direct say over what sports are at their universities. The director or the governor's a governor has the ability, based on the Constitution, to appoint regents to the universities. And then the regents are supposed to then oversee the president and oversee the athletic directors and all that kind of stuff. The governor does not have direct control over appointing a sport back. But they have both kind of made it clear that that's the path they're taking. When they appoint new regents, they want these regents to reinstate sports, mainly men's soccer.
You know, I think it's funny because you mentioned a news cycle right now, and there's sharks circling, so I don't see an end to that. I don't see an end to that for a while. It's your job to cover that, and I get that. But when you have the Attorney General involved and issues that, that first it was the golf trip with Krebs, and that was reported, and there's people that want accountability, and it needs to happen. I'm an alumni too, man. And I love the program. I love the athletic program. Eddie Nunez kind of thrown into it. Garnett Stokes thrown into it. But people want answers. Now, to me, them saying that they're going to put sports back, is it a cheap political ploy? Of course it is. Of course it is. They call it what it is. Because then, if you do that for them, then other people, okay, well, when things happen otherwhere, you got to put. Now, it's a hot button political issue because, I did the PA for Lobo Soccer last Tuesday. And you know what? They still got a lot of support. Jeremy Fishbine's not going down without a fight. I don't blame him.
And he shouldn't.
Right. So you know what, Jeff? I think you're going to be covering this next 3-4 months. It's shark circling, man. It's not going to stop anytime soon.
I'll tell you what, the Lobo basketball writer at the Journal, historically, this is the time of year you start getting revved up a little bit for basketball. You start getting your mind right. You get prepared for what is about 6 months of working 7 days a week, loving your job, but a lot of late nights. You're getting prepared for that. I want the basketball season to start so I can actually relax a little bit because I'm sick of covering all these meetings. I'm sick of having to deal with politicians. I left the news beat to not have to deal with politicians so much. That said, I think you're right, unfortunately. I think this isn't going to die down. I don't think there'll be too many 2-3 week periods where we don't have a story or two about this because people are making it so. People are making this one of the campaign issues. People are making this, you mentioned Jeremy Fishbine. A lot of people I shouldn't say a lot of people. Some people have been critical of how out there and how emotional he's been because he does still work for the university. Should he support their decision? Of course not, because his primary duty when he was hired as men's soccer coach is to fight for the men's soccer players and to build the men's soccer team. So I give him a lot of leeway for doing whatever he feels is necessary to fight for his team and his program, and that's what he's doing right now. I do think that why it's critical right now, first of all, nothing's going to be decided until the legislative session and until new regents are in place. So this won't be decided until the spring. But unfortunately, what's really critical in Jeremy Fishbine's mind is once this season ends, his players have to decide by the spring semester. Are we going to move on and transfer now while there might be openings?
Right.
Or are we going to wait around to see if we're reinstated? Because they could transfer in the summer too. If there's no soccer team next season, obviously, is what I'm talking about. But if you want to guarantee that you get to pick the school you transfer to and the best program, you probably have to transfer at the semester break in December.
Right.
And that's why not having any finality to this until the legislative session next January and February puts a lot of pressure on the soccer team and on these players.
Well, here's one of the things that Ed brought up also why I don't think this is going to go away anytime soon is the fact that in the AG report, there were emails and stuff talked about, it all goes back to the Scotland trip. It all goes back to finances. And what was one of the reasons why they were cutting sports in the first place? Finances.
Sure. That was the reason. And I know Title IX has been brought up a lot. There's still some discussion about if this plan actually helps the Title IX situation. Obviously, cutting back on some scholarships does. There's no denying that. But the roster management that was talked about, adding walk-ons to a bunch of teams, basically creating a B team on the women's cross-country team with a bunch of walk-on positions. There's some debate as to how much that actually helps. If just adding walk-ons actually makes you Title IX compliant, you would see Alabamas of the world. You'd see a lot of big programs around the country that had 500-team women's cross-country teams everywhere. So there's some debate as to how much roster management actually is going to solve this problem. But this did start, let's not forget, with the regents voting on a budget proposal that called for $1.9 million in reduction in sports. That is how this started. It was a financial, not a Title IX, but a financial decision. So if the legislators do have money, and they're all saying they have money now, but if they actually do have money, what started this could be solved. But then the question is, for how long? Is this a one-year thing? Is this a two-year thing? Those are the things that UNM has to kind of grapple with. When they are having money thrown at them, it's hard to say no when you're in UNM's position, but they're now saying we can't just take the money for a year and then go through this again next year. So that's
well,
a tough spot there.
in that regard, it's almost like a football replay analogy where the ruling on the field stands, and it's hard to go back to before if that's what you got, and the standing ruling is cutting sports.
Exactly, and that's kind of where they're at right now. Eddie Nunez has no option other than moving forward as though there won't be sports, because on paper, that's what the decision is right now. So he has to move forward as though there won't be sports. Garnet Stokes has to move forward with, frankly, Garnet Stokes and the regents need to quit talking about athletics at every meeting. There's a whole university there. There's a $3 billion budget of the university, primarily with the HSC, the Health Science Center. They have other matters that they have to address at some point. They have to quit asking athletics to come present at every meeting. They have to quit asking Eddie Nunez to give an update on the finances. At some point, they have to go a meeting without talking about athletics, because every time they do, they just sort of extend this open wound that won't ever heal. And it's frankly, as we talked about, it's not going to heal until springtime anyway. So as best you can, UNM, probably let it just lay low a little bit, because everyone else, politicians, are going to make sure this is a story on themselves, so you don't have to do it yourself.
I'll tell you what, sounds good, right? But it's like the hand from Carrie at the end of the movie, coming up from the grave, man. You remember that. Yeah. And it doesn't stop. It doesn't stop. It's a hot button issue. And, unfortunately or fortunately, Twitter, Instagram, social media is another part. So it doesn't go away. All the things you're saying are true. I got my degree from UNM. Education matters in this state, right? Yeah. Shouldn't it?
I'll tell you what, if there's a biology program that was cut, or a wing of the Anderson School of Business that was cut, there was some program there cut, and you bring back a sport that was cut, you can't tell me that the academic side of the university campus is going to be up in arms saying, wait a minute, you cut our program last year, you cut this part of the from Pope Joy Hall, anything, a ton of examples. if they do bring back a sport in athletics that was cut for financial reasons, and you don't do the same for a program that was cut on the academic side, then you're really, like, it's hard not to put a comparison in people's minds between what does mean more to you, athletics or academics.
That's a spot I never thought of. Well, Jeff, anything else before we let you go? What's coming up in the Journal? What are you working on? Hopefully basketball, right?
There is some basketball coming. Fortunately, there's going to be a press conference tomorrow. I'll be covering that. I did have an interview today with he's an NBA scout now, former college coach, who came in to talk to the coaching staff. I'll have a podcast and an article about that in the next couple days.
You're the podcast king, by the way, nowadays.
I'm trying, man. I'm trying something new.
Absolutely. Well, Jeff, as always, thank you so much. We'll have you on again.
Appreciate it.
And we will take a break, come back with more here on the Sports Desk.
It's hard for a child to learn when they're hungry or being abused at home. Let's stop blaming teachers for problems they didn't create. I'm Steve Pierce. My mom loved teaching, but now Santa Fe asks teachers to be truant officers or social workers. Let our teachers teach, fix our broken test system, and put more money into classrooms. Good teachers don't give up on their kids. As governor, I will not give up on our teachers.
This is Coach Borrego of the Charlotte Hornets. Hello to all you parents out there in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I want to congratulate 38 years for the AYBL. You guys are doing a great job. You've shaped a lot of lives, young men and women, and you'll continue to do that. Parents, get involved, sign your kid up. It's a great program. It helped shape who I am today, helped shape me as a basketball player, as a coach. So get out there, sign them up. Have a great season. Good luck to everybody.
Get into the game with Garden Swartz Team Sales. They have everything you need, from screen printing, embroidery, and digital printing services, high school letterman jackets, and all high school and club uniforms, and individual and team apparel with the most reliable brands like Speedline, Rollins, and Wilson. And don't forget to check out the latest F7 Shut helmet. It's all at Garden Swartz Team Sales. Give them a call, 505-884-1234. Garden Swartz Team Sales.
Folks, there's no other way but to be all in. Either he's Lord of all or he is not Lord at all. And you can experience the real and authentic, true life change that only God can provide to humanity. See, when we truly encounter Jesus and purpose to know him and follow his teachings, hashtag life change will occur.
The Barley Room, proud sponsor of Proview Networks for over 9 years, is pleased to introduce Black Iron Catering. From weddings and family reunions to birthdays and office parties, Black Iron Catering is perfect for any event. Contact Jamie at 505-459-8259 and book your event today. Black Iron Catering. Let us bring our kitchen to you.
Proview Network crew, assemble!
That's good. We're first.
High school sports are back live on Proview Sports Network.
And we're back here on the Sports Desk. I'm Scott Galletti along with Ed Nunez. Special thanks to Jeffrey Grammer. Jeff Grammer from the Albuquerque Journal. Bob Brown always called him Jeffrey, so I'm kind of keeping the trend there as Bob Brown had his last show on Friday on ESPN Radio 101.7 The Team. We'll have him on, by the way, down the road. You and I had a chance to talk to him when you came out last week for one of his farewell tours, so we'll talk about that. But a lot of interesting things. maybe not what a lot of people want happening, but a lot of interesting things happening at UNM.
Well, you know, if you listen to Jeff, he's Jeffrey, whatever Bob called him. He's, you know,
Right.
I think he's tired of covering the same old things, but he has to.
Yeah.
It's news. He has to do his job. You always remind me. You wrote a ton of articles for papers, and you don't even consider
going
yourself
to these kind of
a journalist.
meetings are the most tedious and just time consuming. And it's like, oh,
Yeah,
come on, hurry up and end kind of thing.
Yeah, you could look at his face, and you know, you're thinking, okay, the first 3 meetings, you know, you're doing whatever you got to do.
Right.
The last 4, you're like, man, gosh, we covered this ground. We have to keep
Right.
coming out.
Right.
And the answer to that is yes, you do.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Some of the meetings you go out and it's like exciting, uncharted territory, and then others are kind of like this, where, you know, I've been to meetings like this too, where you've gone over things over and over again with school boards and everything, and college school boards and whatnot, regents, and it's basically, okay, can we move on? And, you know, but yes, you have to go out there, and because that one meeting that has one sentence, that one sentence
Right.
is going to make the paper.
And someone else is going to get the...
Or it's going to make radio, or it's going to make TV. There's a soundbite in there that someone's going to use.
Someone got the scoop over you.
Right, exactly, and that's the problem.
When you go home, and the other thing about Jeff, he's probably thinking about the other things he needs to cover. And right now, that's news, so he has to keep covering that. And I'm telling you, it's going to keep going on.
Well, and I also wanted to bring him on because he was very, very into the Lobo game. And, you know, Lobos Aggies, he's a former Aggie, but he covers the Lobos, so it was an intriguing matchup. And he knew a lot, and you knew a lot about that game, so I wanted to kind of go back and forth on that. Now we'll go back to the high school side, as we had a game last week. It was the game of the week. Didn't really turn out to be a game of the week, though, as you had 2 3-0 teams. It was La Cueva and Cibola out of Wilson Stadium. And at the beginning, it looked pretty good for the Cibola Cougars, but man, La Cueva is very, very good.
You know what? Cibola actually led 14-13 and never scored after that. So La Cueva, DeAndre Williams played well, Dylan Summer in that defense, and they were missing Fred Mady III. So that defense still dominated.
Yeah, absolutely. At this point, it is 14-6 after that touchdown, or 13-7, I should say, in favor of La Cueva. And then this is where it becomes 14-13 on a nice move there. And, you know, Cibola looked like they made a game, but that defense from La Cueva, I saw them physically shut down a team that went into Rio Rancho last week and put up a lot of points against Rio Rancho. And you sandwich the games after La Cueva, they scored a lot of points, but Las Cruces did nothing against this defense.
You kind of wonder this again. Look at this great move. This was a great run by DeAndre Williams. Great run. So, yes, that defense rose to the occasion. Dylan Summer, we mentioned, would come back. He certainly did. He didn't want to sit out and see his second string run the team. His shoulder injury seemed to be better. So, Cibola did put up a fight for a while, but as we mentioned, that defense from La Cueva just shut them down.
Well, you know, it's kind of funny. We talked about the quarterback situation at UNM, where you have a third stringer maybe not doing everything in the playbook, but Austin Smith the week before against Las Cruces did everything in the playbook, and I think that kind of prompted Dylan Summer, hey, I better get back in there.
Oh, it most certainly did. But Austin Smith's a veteran, Scott. He's been in camp taking the reps when Dylan Summer has been hurt. Another great run by. And great block on the edge there. I saw this game. And, again, La Cueva just dominating the second half.
Yeah, and their ground game, once they get it going, and this guy, especially DeAndre Williams, I mean, they're very hard to stop.
Oh, yeah. The defense gives you the short field, and this is another great run by Williams, I believe.
And they lost a couple of players on their defense, and other guys have stepped up. They've lost a couple of players from their offense, and players have stepped up. And you look at Brandon Back's team, and you think, is this team better than last year?
You have to wonder that, and I think that's a good point. They've returned many of their defensive starters. Dylan Summer had the ACL last year. He's okay now. And DeAndre Williams is just running wild with this offense.
And look at Summer's numbers. 239 yards and 3 scores. Williams, 27 carries, 198. You know, we've mentioned his name in Workhorse, and he does it again.
Well, yeah, look at Prince Robertson, 8 catches for 154 yards. La Cueva, 494 total yards, eliminating Cibola to 209 yards. And Rod Williams had the Cougars at 3-0 in this game. You know, going into this game, let's remember that.
Now, Ed, also, you look at the total yards and the yardage per individual each week, and, You know, you bring up Prince Robertson. That's a great example to bring up because he had a big game this game. The week before, not so much. Week before, and it's not so much him not doing anything. It's they go with the flow. They basically go with what the defense is going to give them. They exploit it, and 1 week it's going to be a rush game. 1 week they throw.
I think what makes him so dangerous is that it's multifaceted. You mentioned Prince Robertson not having a great game the week before, but he does now. So the defenses have to account for that. Then they have to worry about that LaCueva defense that pins you, flips the field, gets turnovers. This is a well-balanced team, and I think Cleveland is still number 1 in this week's ranking,
Right.
but LaCueva is right there.
Mm-hmm. And I bring that up because the stats bear it out. 1 week, one guy won't have a big game, and you wonder what happened. And I actually have been at one of the games where Robertson wasn't utilized. He didn't drop passes. He wasn't even thrown to hardly. So you see a game like this, it's like, he's got 8 receptions, 154. They used him this week.
So if you're game planning, you're thinking, man, this guy comes out
That's
of
what I'm
nowhere.
saying.
Now we got to roll safeties over to him.
Right.
And then DeAndre Williams has more running lanes. Who do you stop?
That's my whole point. Let's look at the polls now. The coaches' polls, starting with 3A, as it's Hope Christian, still number 1 in their performance this week, doing nothing to deter that.
Man, you know what? Again, we're used to talking about their basketball dominance, but from the get-go, from the opening kickoff, Hope has done very well and had a great season so far.
Yeah, absolutely. They're playing so well right now, it's not even funny. You look at 4A, and in 4A, it's Taos, Lovington, Ruidoso, Portales, and Silver. Even though Ruidoso lost their game this week, they're still number 3.
They are, and one big upset that I thought, Kirtland Central at number 10 goes and beats Piedra Vista 7-6. I was shocked at that. Shocked. I had Kirtland Central the week before against St. Pius, and St. Pius beat them, by a score. But I looked at the Broncos, and I didn't think that they would beat Piedra Vista, and they did by 1 point, 7-6.
Right.
And that's a huge loss to the Panthers. Piedra Vista, I'm talking about, for playoff seeding implications later, because Piedra Vista had lost their first one, won 2 straight, then lost to Kirtland Central.
James Otis from the Journal and I talked about it. The biggest question mark that we had is 7-6.
Right. That's like an old black and blue division back from the NFC
Right.
Central score.
Exactly. Yeah. Let's look at 5A. You see Roswell jumping to the top. Artesia number 2, Belen, Las Lunas, and Goddard moves up to number 5. Goddard had a good win also.
Yes, they did. And if you look at Artesia dominating Deming was number 9. They're out of the rankings now. But Roswell, again, I'm going to mention that game, 42-20, just a total domination at Willie Chavez Field on Friday night. And I was a little surprised about that. I haven't seen Las Lunas get thoroughly taken apart like that in many years.
6A, we just mentioned Cleveland number 1, La Cueva number 2, El Dorado is up at number 3, Centennial, Volcano Vista. That rounds out the field. And James Otis, after that win last week at Rio Rancho, looked at Las Cruces thinking, well, maybe they still have something.
You can never count them out, man. You know that. They still have some great players there, and Molina's still there, I believe, and he's a third-year starter for them. And they've been well coached, and they've always been there. So yes, I don't think they can be counted out. Cibola drops to number 10 with Rod Williams. They're 3-1. So we'll have to see how they do after their loss to La Cueva last week.
We'll take a quick break, and we will come back and show you what's coming up this week here on the Sports Desk.
Don't sacrifice quality of flavor when you're in a hurry. Golden Pride offers ribs, fried chicken, green and red chili breakfast burritos, and Frontier Cinnabons. 4 great locations, or visit us online at goldenpride@abq.com. Golden Pride Barbecue Chicken and Ribs, proud supporter of Proview Sports Network.
Sadie's is a proud supporter of New Mexico high school sports and athletics, and we here at Proview Networks would like to thank Sadie's for their continued support in helping us bring you all of your New Mexico high school sports coverage.
Car Crafters, proud supporter of Proview Sports Network.
Are you sure we're supposed to be doing this? Don't worry, I've watched him do it 1,000 times. Come on, what's the worst that could happen?
No! Bad dog! Hi, welcome to Car Crafters. What happened? Don't worry, we'll make it like it never happened.
Car Crafters, it's like it never happened.
The Sports Desk is proudly presented by Car Crafters. It's like it never happened.
We are back here on the Sports Desk. I'm Scott Galletti, Ed Nunez, Alden Ioane doing a great job as always.
Of course, you know what? One of the things that you and I talk about a lot, you and I worked together 4 years, man, 5 years with Proview Networks. And the guys in the studio, and I know we say this all the time, Jason Pohl, Josh Brown, and Alden Ioane, not only do they do great jobs, but they're great guys.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we love the commercial that they're on. Every time I see it, I've seen it 40 or 50 times, I still laugh. And I'm glad they're getting the notoriety that they deserve. They got to host the rundown the other day. I was so happy for them, because they've got such great talent and creativity that a lot of people don't get to see. We see it,
right.
And it's hard work what they do. And so I'm glad they're getting the recognition because I sure think the world of all three of them.
No, you are dead on. And I've seen these guys when they started. I see these guys now, and what an improvement, and they continue to get better. They continue to shock us with, like you said, the commercials that make us, I still laugh, and it's been like 6 weeks since I first saw the commercial.
Well, I laugh at all three of them, Alden throwing the paper,
right.
Josh in the stream, Jason getting up from the yoga. I mean, it's very creative and very funny, and you know what, it shows, again, the behind the scenes, people don't see the work that they do to lug the equipment, the setup, everything they have to do before the game even starts. So they deserve a lot of credit, and I'm glad we gave it to them.
Take a look at the schedules here coming up this week, and we've got a busy plate of football as always. Only one game on Thursday, Albuquerque at El Dorado. That's at Wilson Stadium. You have the big one, Artesia Cleveland. We'll talk about that in a second. Highland del Norte, La Cueva, Rio Rancho, Manzano, West Mesa, Rio Grande, Sandia. Other Friday games we'll look at right now, and lots of other games on Friday. You've got Belen, Piedra Vista. That's going to be interesting.
I interviewed Belen running back Diego Casillas on Sunday, and Piedra Vista coming off that tough loss. And I even asked him, I think Belen has a district matchup after Piedra Vista. Are they looking ahead? And he said no. So we'll see. Piedra Vista, they're playing at home. They know to beat Belen, what do you have to do? You have to stop Diego Casillas. But so far, no one's been able to do that, so we'll see. Saturday games coming up. Got Bloomfield and Hope. Could be a good one. Las Lunas, Cibola. That's going to be interesting. Okay, I've got that game, and I'm looking forward to it because this Las Lunas rebound, Roger Holian and I will have a call for that. The Cibola rebound. So that's a game that I think both teams feel they have something to prove. We'll see. So let's look at a couple of the games. We mentioned Cleveland Artesia. How can you not love this game, Ed Nunez? Artesia 2-2, but they're still a juggernaut. They've got another Howdling. And they've got basically a two-quarterback system as they got Howdling and Taylor. Taylor actually has more yards passing, but both see a lot of action. You've got Dorian Lewis, the big gun for Cleveland. And you look at the points, 42.3 for Cleveland, Artesia 33.3. Something's got to give, right? Something's got to give. So that kind of matchup, a couple of years ago, Cleveland went down to Artesia. You and I talked about it, all the talk in the coffee shops in Artesia. You know how many of the Bulldog faithful travel well. They're coming up to Lightning Bolt Stadium. Wow, what a matchup again. Artesia, I think people feel like they're a little bit vulnerable. They're 2-2. They're ranked third in this week's 5A poll, but they're still Artesia, so that should be a great game. And another one, La Cueva, Rio Rancho. Bring that one up because La Cueva 4-0, Rio Rancho. You never know what you're going to get out of a team that's usually one of the best in the state. David Howes told me last night he's very high on this team, even though they're having a bit of tough luck, and he also says it's one of the toughest schedules in the preseason that he's played. David Howes has had a lot of success out there, so look at that again, 43.7 points per game average on offense for Rio Rancho, and La Cueva only allowing 20.7 on defense. So right there, I think that matchup favors La Cueva. Let's see what happens. Yeah, I think it's flip-flop there. It's 43 points for La Cueva, 20.7 for Rio Rancho. Yeah, I had to redo this graphic. Yeah. I was hoping that nothing got messed up, but I didn't change home and visitor, so there's the numbers. The numbers are correct. It's just the wrong team has the numbers. But anyway, you get the gist of it. 1-3, and Dylan Summers is back, 349 yards, 4 touchdowns, 1 interception. Again, I think we talked about that with James Yotis, and I think Dylan Summers said, hey, I better get out there. You saw Austin Smith playing well, and you got the clipboard, you got the hat on, and you're charting the plays, and you're thinking, man, you're trying not to look upset, but you're thinking, I better get back out there, and he did. And La Cueva, big victory over Cibola last Thursday. And DeAndre Williams, I mean, you look at Williams, he is one of, and some people might argue, still the best running back
in the Metro and in the state, but the young man at Cleveland has a lot to say about that.
If you look at it, and I think you bring up a great point, you got Dorian Lewis, you got DeAndre Williams, and Diego Casillas certainly belongs in that conversation. He may not be the overall back that those two are, but one of the things I love about DeAndre Williams is the running in traffic, the cutbacks, the vision. He's a great back.
So as we roll along here on the show, let's look at the volleyball coaches polls, the NMOTSC coaches polls in 3A. Robertson, St. Mike's, Tularosa, Sandia Prep still standing at number 4, and Santa Fe India moves up to number 5.
Yeah, they're pretty much the same as they were the week before.
I think the only change is Santa Fe India.
Right.
Let's go to 4A now, and that's Hope Christian still on top. Artesia, St. Pius, Goddard, and Academy.
Well, look at Pius. I think Pius was number 7 or 5 the last time, so they moved up a couple of spots, and they always seem to have a good volleyball team out there.
And in 5A, you can say formerly 6A, although some former 5A teams still in there. La Cueva, Centennial, Sandia, Las Cruces, and Cibola, number 1 through 5. Rio Rancho playing pretty well as of late also.
You know, I'm really a big fan of Toby Manzanares, the volleyball coach out there, the former St. Pius coach, the former St. Pius graduate. I've known Toby for 30-some years. I think so much of him. His players love him. They come back and they visit him, and he sent a lot of those Ram girls to college on volleyball scholarships. But not only that, he's mentored to them as well. Great guy.
So a lot going on here on ProView. Lots of games coming up, Ed. I know you have a couple this week. Why don't you talk about the games you have?
Well, I've got Monzano on Friday. Cover from that shocking loss to Volcano Vista, because that was a stunning loss on homecoming. They've struggled a little bit. Of course, they've lost a lot from that senior laden championship team last year. But I think La Cueva, Las Lunas, and Cibola on Saturday is a game that I know Roger Holian and we're looking forward to both of them, because every game is a big one that you cover. So, but I think Las Lunas Cibola is really going to be an intriguing matchup, because both teams pretty much got it handed to them last week. How do they recover and bounce back? That's going to be the key.
Back to Monzano, I think one of the things that gave a lot of people hope last week against Volcano Vista, like I said, David Williams and I were looking at each other thinking, is this going to be a close game or is it going to be a blowout? Monzano played ball control, and both teams played ball control. They both played no huddle. There wasn't a huddle in the entire game. The game was about probably 2 hours and 20 minutes. It was a quick one. Wow. And it just had a pace about it, but it was run, pass here, pass there. But it was one of those outstanding game plans that Monzano had against Volcano Vista.
Yeah, you know what, Ivy Sod is still there, Dakota Powell, the quarterback. They lost a lot from that defensive line, but I think Monzano's still a formidable opponent. But man, Scott, you don't lose an Andrew Erickson and a Jordan Bird and the other players that they lost. Vallejos, the slot back, they had a lot of speed last year. You don't lose people like that and not suffer the consequences, and that's what's happened to them.
Final word, Ed.
Well, just looking forward to another, Scott, it's week 5. Next week we'll be talking about week 6. Great to have Jeff Grammer on here. And I just want to say one quick thing. Bob Brown, congratulations. What a career you had. You went out on your own terms, man. Thank you for all the help that you gave me in my career.
He's Ed Nunez. Thanks to Jeff Grammer from the Albuquerque Journal. Thanks to Alden Iowani and the entire crew here at ProView Networks. Until next week, Scott Coletti saying so long from the Sports Desk.
Don't sacrifice quality of flavor when you're in a hurry. Golden Pride offers ribs, fried chicken, green and red chili breakfast burritos, and Frontier Cinnabons. 4 great locations, or visit us online at goldenpride@abq.com. Golden Pride Barbecue Chicken and Ribs, proud supporter of ProView Sports Network.
Sadie's is a proud supporter of New Mexico high school sports and athletics, and we here at ProView Networks would like to thank Sadie's for their continued support in helping us bring you all of your New Mexico high school sports coverage.
Car Crafters, proud supporter of Proview Sports Network.